Dr. Levine, do you believe that minors are capable of making such a life-changing decision as changing one's sex?
Well, Senator, thank you for your interest in this question. Transgender medicine is a very complex and nuanced
hope
field.
you feel better.
The specific question was about minors. Let's be a little more specific since you evaded the question. Do you support the government intervening to override the parent's consent to give a child puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and/or amputation surgery of breasts and genitalia?
Senator, transgender medicine is a very complex...
The answer, clearly, is yes, as Levine even told a former Trump administration official. Just pause on that for a moment and think about how crazy that is.
They don't start with surgeries at the young age. They start with puberty blockers that trans kids are on for what? They're on for what, 2-3 years at most? And yeah, they're not permanent. They are reversible. Though if on for like 5-10 years, there might be permanent damage, but nobody's on them that long because in a couple years of gender exploration, you know more or less where you lie, whether or not you'll really feel whether or not you really feel like you want the surgery or not. Oh, I forgot Halls. I should have got lozenges. I also forgot my point. Right, surgery isn't done on kids, except in my case. I had breast reduction surgery at 14. That wasn't stopped, that wasn't questioned. That was okay. 9 male at birth. I grew titties. What's your answer to that, Shabibo?
Now, in the past few years, you've heard a lot of statements that sound like we must not raise boys as boys and girls as girls because we just can't be sure that kids actually have the sex assigned to them at birth. You've heard that some people are men in women's bodies or women in men's bodies. You may even have heard that if you're a straight dude and you don't want to have sex with a trans woman, meaning a biological male, this makes you gay. All of this is insane, patent nonsense.
Wait, how the fuck did he say that last bit?
I have sex with a trans woman, meaning a biological male, this makes you gay. People are men in women's bodies or women in men's bodies. You may even have heard that if you're a straight dude and you don't want to have sex with a trans woman, meaning a biological male, this makes you gay. All of
a straight dude that doesn't want to have sex with a trans woman is just a straight dude. Attracted to femininity. If it was for sexual performance, it would be covered by insurance? Wow. I just reread that. Jeez. You're in the States, right? That's like... that is some weird insurance stuff. Yeah, exactly. Just because you're straight doesn't mean you're attracted to every person of the opposite gender. It means you're attracted to people from that group. Not all. You're in Colorado? Oh, nice. Would love to visit, but I think the border's still closed for driving. And I don't travel. Scared.
this is insane patent nonsense. Males and females reproduce with one another in the human species. We've known this for quite a while. The simple reality is that the human species is sexually dimorphic. Sex is binary. We come in two brands, male and female.
It's
Typically,
not binary.
those who have the XY chromosomes are male. Those who have XX chromosomes are female. Males and females differ. They differ in size and shape, and musculature. Those who have X sex is binary. We come in two brands, male and female. Typically, those who have the XY chromosomes are male. Those who have XX chromosomes are female.
Typically.
Males and females differ. They differ in size and shape, and musculature, brain function. As neuroscientist Steven Pinker says, differences between the sexes are part of the human condition.
I don't disagree with that sentence.
There are certainly people who have anomalous genetic conditions, like Klinefelter syndrome, in which a person has two X chromosomes and a Y chromosome, and in whom breast development looks female while male genitalia are present. Overall, disorders of sexual development affect 1 in every 5,000 births. Now, the presence of abnormal development does not mean that sex is a spectrum. To suggest otherwise, it would be the same thing as saying that because one child every few thousand is born with 3 toes.
So, having variations does not... in binary, there's 0 and 1. Those two categories. There's not 0 and 1 and 0.1, 0.2. No, it's only those two. So sex being a binary is broken just from your example. What the hell, Ben? Didn't you go to college? I didn't. How do I know more than you?
This means that the number of toes in a human being is a spectrum.
I did go to college.
Or that a person with 3 toes might actually be a sloth human, a 3-toed sloth human.
A person with 3 toes.
All reproduction is rooted in the presence of sexual dimorphism. To pretend otherwise is biologically nonsensical. That's why, to end a conversation on transgenderism, just ask for a simple, non-self-referential definition of the terms man and woman. When I say non-self-referential, I mean you can't say, I feel like a woman, therefore I am a woman. For advocates of biology...
Okay. Man and woman are just the social roles that we've ascribed to what we thought of as two sexes, but have come to realize... Ad break? Oh, fun. What I've come to realize is that... Shit, I don't even remember that point. I am so great at keeping on track. What was he saying? I'll go back a bit. Oh, right.
I feel like a woman, therefore I am a woman.
Yeah, he wants me to define man and woman. Those are just the social roles or the gender roles that we've applied to previous roles given, or those are previous gender roles applied to characteristics based on our sex. I don't like the role for the male characteristics. I like the female role. What's so hard about that, Ben? So being able to reproduce doesn't make someone a woman. I'm sure his grandmother can't reproduce. She no longer a woman. I would say she's not, or she is a woman regardless of whether being able to give birth. And I'm sure you do too. But Ben, I don't know where he sits.
Advocates of biology, the answer for what is woman or what is man is simple. You can look at chromosomes, SRY genes, reproductive systems, verifiable answers to the question. For advocates of the position that some biological men are women, or vice versa, there is no standard that can be applied. A man can become a woman or a woman a man at any time without any stable definition of man or woman whatsoever. So according to our pseudo-medical activists, gender identity is completely separate from sex. The separation between gender and sex relies on a simple fallacy, that gender is entirely socially constructed and thus separate from biology.
Everybody inform all the medical people, doctors, those scientists. They're all wrong. You know, the American Psychiatric Association, I know. Ben Shapiro likes to say big words and then misrepresent what they actually mean. You're supposed to believe him because he went to Harvard.
Gender in this iteration would be all the various feminine qualities
Per law,
that
by the
adhere
way.
to womanhood, or the masculine qualities that adhere to being a male. According to these folks, gender and sex are completely different. Right? All of those gendered notions of femininity, they're completely separate from being a biological female. This Cartesian notion that you can be a woman in a man's body, a soul in the machine, because your gender is separate from your sex, is utterly unsupportable at any level. Everyone understands there are some attributes that are generally considered more masculine. Chopping wood, being dumb.
I'm whizzing with the door open, and I love it.
And some that are considered more feminine. Being caring, being nice, right? These are distinctions that do appear in virtually all cultures. Some of that.
Sure, being able to chop wood, it would be a little better for high testosterone people because, you know, that gives the big muscles. But the rest of that can apply to anybody, not just men and women.
That is undoubtedly biologically oriented, and some is undoubtedly social construction. But it is simply ridiculous to suggest that if a boy is effeminate, he's actually a girl. Or that if a girl is masculine, she might actually be a boy. But this is what gender theorists argue.
What, do you think there's just manly men, womanly women, and then trans men, trans women? There's no feminine men? There's no masculine women? There's no androgynous people? Non-binary people? No? Oh, right, he denies all that. Yeah, he likes to bring up points that are not actually considered by his opponents because he's shadowboxing a straw man. That's Ben Shapiro for you.
The origins of the gender identity movement lie with a professor of medical psychology at Johns Hopkins in the 1960s.
Yeah, pretty
His name
much.
was John Money. After twin boys were born, and after a botched circumcision destroyed one boy's penis, that boy was raised as a girl. By the time that boy was a teenager, the boy felt extraordinary discomfort because he was biologically male, and his parents told him the truth. Both twins ended up killing themselves in their mid-30s. That didn't stop John Money from founding the Johns Hopkins Gender Identity Clinic in 1965. His theory was children could identify as members of the opposite sex, and that radical surgery was the proper solution. That inside, these kids were members of the opposite sex in reality, and that surgery would merely make their bodies align with their identity. Money claimed that, quote, the gender identity gate is open at birth for a normal child, no less than for one born with unfinished sex organs, and would stay that way for at least a year. So in other words, you could have a full biological boy with finished sex organs, and his gender identity was still open. Brains and bodies were considered in direct opposition, completely separate from one another. Radical feminists like Judith Butler began to argue
that Money point doesn't support your argument. That twin that had the botched circumcision didn't identify as a woman. They didn't prescribe to the social roles of femininity. Yeah. But why would you bring that up? Honestly.
Would stay that way for at least a year. So in other words, you could have a full biological boy with finished sex organs, and his gender identity was still open. Brains and bodies were considered in direct opposition, completely separate from one another. Radical feminists like Judith Butler began arguing that all gender was socially constructed, and that therefore all inequalities in outcome between men and women could be laid at the feet of an evil sexist society.
Yeah.
If gender is a meaningless social construct created by society, why does it matter more than sex, which is actual real biology?
If it was meaningless, why would people care so much about it? You're not going to answer that. You're just going to keep rambling on your bullshit.
And why is gender more real than biology itself? Why would anyone need to change his or her body in order to align with gender, a social construction, when gender and sex are completely separate in the first place? Gender dysphoria, which is what we're talking about here, is a serious and tragic disorder. It is also extremely rare. According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5th edition, those who had received a diagnosis of gender identity disorder or transsexualism and were seeking hormone treatment and or surgery represented just 0.005 to 0.014% for males and 0.002 to 0.003% for females. Those stats are now rising dramatically.
Where did he get those stats?
From an Oscar-nominated actor announcing he
dramatic 0.03%, 0.00 Manual 5th edition. Those who had received is what we're talking about here is a serious and tragic disorder. It is also extremely rare. According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5th edition, those
published in 2013. There we go. Diagnostic and Statistical blah 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 blah. Good job. Go there. I will be looking that up real quick. Yeah, the more trans people get normalized, the more people willing to come out, so those numbers will be going up because we don't actually know how many people are out there. Yeah, by the way, hey Lexi, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. You were doing a, what's it? An interview. And yes, we're shitting on Ben Shabibo. He apparently debunked our ideology with no knowledge in biology at all.
Those who had received a diagnosis of gender identity disorder or transsexualism and were seeking hormone treatment and or surgery represented just 0.005 to 0.014% for males and 0.002 to 0.003% for females. Those stats
that seems really low.
We have that big announcement from an Oscar-nominated actor announcing he is transgender. Elliot Page came out publicly with a post about his identity.
And in that post, now liked nearly 2.5 million times, the more I hold myself close and fully embrace who I am, the more I dream, the more my heart grows, and the more I thrive. And guys, that's what we love to see.
Yes, he is going to help so many. Janae, thank you so much.
Okay, I stand Elliot Page.
Dysphoria, which, in its non-politicized definition, means the persistent belief that you are a member of the opposite sex, have a tragically high suicidal ideation and depression rate. That suicidal ideation is the persistent gender dysphoria, which, in its non-politicized definition, means the persistent belief that you are a member.
The fuck is the politicized definition? Yeah, pretty much. Persistent belief that you're a member of the opposite sex. No, that's... Gender incongruence is when your gender misaligns with your sex. Gender dysphoria is when you experience discomfort with that misalignment. You're just making up a definition about dysphoria. Yeah, exactly.
Of the opposite sex have a tragically high suicidal ideation and depression rate.
Why do you think that is, Ben?
That suicidal ideation rate remains tragically high after surgical and hormonal treatment. Longitudinal studies that are good just do not exist on the efficacy of these measures, and the mental health problems associated with gender dysphoria remain extremely damaging, even in particularly accepting society. But suffering from a mental disorder does not change your underlying sex any more than believing that you are Napoleon Bonaparte.
It's not a mental disorder, and why do you think the rates are so high, Ben? It's because of lack of acceptance for people. It's all those people that do come out and then get super rejected by everybody around them. It drops so goddamn low when there's just one person in their life that genuinely accepts them. It still happens because guess what? We get shit on a lot and it's a tough life. But for fuck's sakes, Ben, If you actually cared about them, you'd want to do what actually helps them, not keep denying them their identities. Yeah, it's a lot of the self-harm posts, let's go with transition in general term, is because they face backlash from their close community. And that, oh, I had a point that I was going to go to, and then I forget it, because, you know, let's see. Yeah, Ben, if you actually cared about making lives better for us, why are you denying us rights?
Bonaparte makes you Napoleon Bonaparte.
Wait.
Transgender activists make an objective claim about reality, and in particularly accepting societies. But suffering from a mental disorder does not change your underlying sex, any more than believing that you are Napoleon Bonaparte makes you Napoleon Bonaparte.
That's where the dysphoria comes in. Yeah, he doesn't care if we all get brought to the gulags. He doesn't care. He's just being paid to say this shit. To a lot of people, too.
Transgender activists make an objective claim about reality.
Love that sign.
Based on subjective internal feelings. That's unsustainable. What's more, transgender activists demand that you abandon reason, biology, privacy, even the ability to raise your kids in concert with reality in favor of a delusional quasi-religious worldview in which gender and sex are completely segregated and a boy can be a girl and a girl a boy.
They're not completely segregated, but they are different. Oh my god. He loves saying shit that's just not true.
Now, none of this means that anybody suffering from gender dysphoria ought to be mistreated. Anybody with any sort of disorder ought to be treated with nothing but sympathy and care. But this does mean that a society that seeks to propagandize to children that they can switch their gender is both lying to kids and doing them psychological harm in the process.
You don't switch your gender, you switch your sex.
Unfortunately, that's exactly what our society is now teaching kids in public schools. Anti-biological nonsense, including the lie that you might just be a different gender with different pronouns. And it's not just that.
It's not.
With the new Equality Act,
the motion is
he
adopted.
does not care.
The Biden administration and the Democratic Party are seeking to promote the idea that any institution that doesn't mimic these lies has to be destroyed. Religious institutions are not exempted from federal regulations that demand that men who identify as women be treated as women. And this is true in sports, in restrooms. Ironically, feminists who sought to protect women from men have now seen female spaces completely destroyed because they can't define female and male properly. Most shockingly, we're now a society that demands that parents hand over their kids to the tender mercies of political actors masquerading as medical specialists. If you have a 12-year-old at school with a headache,
Masquerading as medical specialists?
cannot prescribe to them Tylenol without calling you first. But we now have officials in states and in the federal government suggesting that if a 12-year-old says that she is a boy, the school should be able to prescribe puberty blockers without calling a parent. That is a sick society.
What school prescribes puberty blockers? He's just thrown out his outrageous claims.
Is making an unsustainable claim. He can't even know what it is like to be a woman because he is not one. A man with surgeries and hormone treatment.
Ben, can you define what it's like to be a man? Please, enlighten me. Or are you just going to go off on some other point and call us whatever the fuck you want to call us? Because we're not people to you.
Not become a woman, nor does a man who simply declares himself a woman. All of this is insane propaganda that is being propagated for political purposes. So, no, a man cannot become a woman
or a woman. What political purposes, huh? We just want fucking rights.